Hello, it's Catherine Maley, author of Your Aesthetic Practice and president of Cosmetic Image Marketing, where we get you more patients and more profits. I want to welcome you to this very special presentation entitled How to Run Your Practice Like a Business. Now, this is different from what I normally present since I typically talk about the marketing side of surgery. Whereas in this presentation, we're going to talk about the business side of surgery, which is just as important. So we're going to cover how to increase your cosmetic practice revenues by 27% without hiring more staff, spending more on advertising, competing on price, or working more than 50 hours per week. Because imagine this, coming to an office that runs smoothly with or without you, having a team supporting you, having a plan in place that generates more consistent revenues you can count on month after month, differentiating you as the best choice so you don't compete on price, having systems in place you can measure. That sounds good, doesn't it? And the best part is, it's not that difficult to have once you understand the 4 core success principles to take your practice to the next level in less time and with less hassle. Now, I know you may be wondering why I'm qualified to speak on this topic, so here's my background. I do have an MBA from USF where I learned the theories of business that were supposed to prepare me for business. But I've also run my own business called Cosmetic Image Marketing for over 17 years now. So I do have firsthand knowledge of the problems of hiring the right staff, feeling responsible for them, covering the overhead. I know the headaches of decision making and feeling all alone because nobody understands the pressures of all that's involved. And I founded the Masters Academy of Surgeons, where I engaged an 8-figure surgeon to partner with me to coach surgeons on the business side of surgery. Now, he has a 22,000 square foot facility, 45 plus staff, several profit centers, including a private OR with multiple surgeons. So we would work with small groups of surgeons at a time by meeting 3 times a year at nice hotels, and we met online in between to discuss how you set yourself up to win. As a matter of fact, we increased the average practice profits of our Masters members by 27%. So this presentation will give you a summation of what we covered, so you too can profit. The agenda for this presentation will cover the state of the aesthetic industry today, the 4 core success principles the 8-figure cosmetic practice follows, a special invitation to dive even deeper if what I present here makes sense to you. And so let's talk about the aesthetic industry. It's grown to over $13.5 billion, and that's great news. But that's what's shifting. The non-surgical procedures have quickly caught up with the surgical, and that's a big challenge for plastic surgeons. Technical advancements have created new patient needs and demands for less downtime, pain, scarring, and cost. Now, that indicates the demand for surgical procedures could be in jeopardy if you don't capture and nurture the preferred patients before your competitors do. And more on that later. Now, another challenge that happens is the cycle of an industry in general. Plastic surgeons were the early adapters and the early majority to the cash side of medicine, but no more. Because of the economic, political, government, technology advancements, as well as social trends, cosmetic rejuvenation went mainstream. And that's also thanks to the celebrities like the Kardashians. So that changes everything. Although plastic surgeons are still an elite group of service providers, every other specialty stepped in to get their piece of the pie. So, all of these providers are now spending a ton of money on offline and online low-priced advertising and marketing hype because they have to in order to compete. But that makes it nearly impossible for you to stand out and be heard over the advertising and marketing noise going on today. And to make it worse, this additional supply of service providers creates confusion in the mind of the cosmetic patient. They have too much choice, so they don't know what is the best procedure given their problem, and then they certainly don't know who then would be the best provider to give them that solution. So, how do you compete successfully given all of these challenges? Well, you need the razor's edge. You discover what the other top cosmetic practices around the country do to win no matter how competitive it gets. So, here's the life cycle of a cosmetic practice. You finally are ready to set up shop. So, you start out with nothing. Then you grow and mature. But then you have a tendency to rest on your laurels and you decline. The good news is you have the opportunity for rebirth because the alternative is not pretty since it's death of your practice if you don't keep up with today's growing demands in running a successful cosmetic surgery practice. So, to help ensure you continue to grow and set yourself up for a certain future, let's go over the 4 core success principles in detail. Core principle number 1, build a team of rock stars. Most cosmetic surgeons have challenges with their staff. Maybe their staff doesn't care about the practice like you do, or maybe they're not converting prospective patients into paying patients. In fact, oftentimes maybe they're chasing patients away and you don't even know it. Or they don't know how to promote you as the best choice to the patient. However, you cannot build your successful cosmetic practice on your own. There's just not enough of you to go around. You need a team of rock stars that are trained and motivated to ensure your success. The kind of staff who have your back, who eagerly and cheerfully sing your praises to prospective patients, who take care of your current patients and treat them like family, and who work together as a team. Because the opposite of that opens the door to what you don't want to happen, which is high staff turnover, an uncomfortable working environment, tension, or God forbid, embezzlement. None of that can happen when you're set up properly. But it goes both ways. 70% of employees quit a job over frustration. So, to avoid losing good A players, they need from you clarity, acknowledgement, recognition, and significance. That means it all starts with you as the captain of the ship. In order for you to transform your staff into your dream team, they need to know what your vision is for your practice so they can help you get there. They need to know what you're trying to accomplish and what that means to them. Now, they also need clear feedback and accountability, and we'll go into that more in a minute. So, it all starts with the who. There's a saying in business that goes, you've got to get the right people on the bus and then get them in the right seats. So, to do that, you need to know where to look for these rock stars. Also, what qualities to look for, as well as what to ask during the interview. But then you need to train them so they understand how you want them to treat your patients so they represent you accurately. Then it's important to track, reward, and celebrate their successes so they continue to perform for you at a high level. So, keeping your team engaged, motivated, and productive takes structure and strategy. And it's one of the most important aspects of growing a truly successful cosmetic surgery practice today. Think about it. What's it worth to you to have a support team that is trained, skilled, and professional so you know they have your back and you can count on them to deliver? Core principle number 2, strategic marketing and planning. Now, this is important if you're tired of figuring out what to do to attract more patients to your practice. And if you're frustrated throwing money at marketing, yet not knowing if it's working or not. And if you're sick of the roller coaster revenue roller coaster, as we like to call it. So, what is the best way to grow your cosmetic practice? SEO, otherwise known as search engine optimization, has been the number one strategy for prospective patients to find your website, but Google rules change on a dime. I'm sure you've heard SEO is dead. And in a nutshell, that means that in order for you to get ranked on the first page of the search results, you must be considered an authority website, which is no easy task. And even if you do show up in the rankings, did you know that only 3% of those prospective patients who are clicking on your website are actually ready to say yes? So this is fiercely competitive. So Maybe PPC works better. PPC is also called pay per click. Now, this is where you pay for banner ads to advertise. However, you have to be willing to outbid your competitors for placement, so this can get very expensive. So maybe it's consumer directories. Now, these were very popular, and some still are, but Google deranked most of them because they see it as gaming the system. Also, you can't control the quality of these leads, so you wind up wasting your time on those who don't show up or can't say yes to you. Maybe it's social media, because this has gotten very, very popular. However, it's got its own drawbacks. Now, the big one is time, because it's going to take you and your staff time to write the content, to upload photos, as well as to interact in real time throughout the day. It's also tough to monetize this social media strategy because it's difficult to track results. And here's a tip. The objective of social media for you should be to drive prospective cosmetic patients to your website so you can develop a relationship with them without the distraction. So as you can see, the list is endless, and that makes it easy to get overwhelmed. So you either don't do anything because you're confused, or you do everything and chase every shiny object, and you're buying into the hype of the latest gimmick because you're sure this will get you ahead of your competitors who must know something you don't. But here's the reality. The most successful surgeons I know are not opportunists. The most successful surgeons I know are strategic. Instead of chasing marketing tactics, they take time out to create a comprehensive and strategic plan using a specific formula. And the best part is, instead of spending a lot of time trying to learn the latest tactics and wasting a lot of money on trial and error, they implement a marketing machine to keep a steady stream of cosmetic patients coming to them on autopilot. Now imagine having this plan in place bringing you in an extra 20, 30, 50 grand on autopilot. Wouldn't that give you the peace of mind you're after? Now here's core principle number 3. Set standards so you don't compete on price. The cosmetic patient who has been researching options is not only confused, but they're super skeptical. While consulting with you, the prospective patient is wondering if you're the best choice. Not just a good choice, but are you the best choice? And are they going to be happy with their result? And if they should shop around to get a better price or stay with you, they just don't know. So what do? You answer the questions the prospective patient has in their mind, and you give them logical, emotional, and personal reasons why you are the best choice, so they're able to relay those reasons to their family and friends who also want to know why they chose you. So here we are again. Why are you the best choice? This is not the time to be coy. It's time to brag. Point out what others don't mention or won't mention because they don't think it's a big deal. Because here's the secret. It's the details that differentiate you. For example, I have 39 differentiating strategies, and here's just one of them. You pre-frame you by having the patient review your education, credentials, skills, and experience using a visual like this one. Now the cosmetic patient realizes a lot more goes into their decision other than just price. But then you've got to back it up with awesome customer service. The cosmetic patient has got to feel special and cared for, and that means during every step in your process, every time, no matter what. Now, this is easier said than done, and it can't be taken lightly. It's just too competitive to be inconsistent with the patient experience. The secret is to change your attitude and focus. So instead of thinking how much that one procedure is worth to you, you focus on what the lifetime value of not only that procedure, but the countless other procedures you'll get when that patient returns again and again and refers their friends and family. So when you have a strategic plan in place, a $500 Botox patient can add up to an $18,500 revenue stream in procedures for them and their friends. And here's core principle number 4. Set up your practice to grow. This is where most practices fall short from being the best they can be. because a strong, successful cosmetic practice is built on metrics, predictable income, as well as processes and systems. And the secret is to keep it simple so you'll continue to do it over and over. For example, the health of your cosmetic practice is based on only a few key metrics. So let's go through them. It starts with the number of calls and consultation requests you get. Then, how many of those requests ended up being a consultation? So that's the number of consultations. And of all the consultations, how many became a procedure? Okay. And then after all the procedures, what was the number of the post-op visits that actually came back in? And of those post-op visits, what's the number of online reviews? And what's the number of the word-of-mouth referrals? And what's the number of the patients returning? Once you understand your few metrics that actually move the needle for you, you'll map out a process for each of those steps. So here's just one example of a process map that gives your staff clarity and structure so they understand how important they are to your success. Because it's never one thing that leads to success. It's a whole bunch of little things working together. But you're not done. Just because you have the framework does not mean everyone's going to follow it, right? Go another step deeper to assign each metric to a specific team member. For example, who's actually going to track the number of calls and consultation requests? And then who's going to track the number of consultations? The obvious one would be the receptionist, and she's the one, taking the phone calls. And then the number of procedures can be tracked by your patient coordinator. But then here are the details. Who is going to track the number of post-op visits? Who is going to track the number of online reviews? Who is going to track the number of word-of-mouth referrals? And who's going to track the number of patients returning? So now you have the metric and you've got the staff person responsible for that metric. But now you want to implement processes for each step. For example, let's say the receptionist is in charge of taking calls for new leads. Well, she's got to know what the goal is. And the goal is for her to pre-qualify the caller, position you and the practice as the best choice, and then book a consultation. So, what does she need to help her? Well, she needs the FAQs for that procedure so she can easily answer simple questions. And she also needs a checklist to follow on every call so she doesn't leave anything out. So for that, she can use my free 5-phone fixed scripting guide that's on my website. But the point is, do you see how detailed this is? It doesn't leave anything to chance. And your staff can't say, I didn't know what you wanted, because it's completely mapped out for them in a process. Now, there's another saying in business that applies to a cosmetic practice as well, and that is get the right people on board, give them the tools they need, and then hold them accountable. So here's how you do that. I call it managing with metrics. So instead of wondering or guessing how things are going, you monitor the health of your practice with a simple dashboard of metrics that you go over every week at a weekly staff meeting. Now, this shows the behavior of your staff as well as your patients. So you start with a team member reporting stats for each lead generation strategy you use to attract new patients. And those would be the yellow boxes. So somebody has got to take a look at all of those patient attraction strategies you use, and they have to come up with the number of calls and consultation requests you get. Then somebody's got to report the stats for converting those calls to appointments. And then your coordinator's got to report her stats for booking procedures, as well as who actually had a procedure done. Then somebody else has to report on how many of those patients got a next day follow-up call or came back for a visit. And then somebody else has to report on how many of those patients came back for another surgical post-op visit. And this is super important. Then how many of all these patients who had a surgery procedure or had some kind of a treatment done, how many of them actually became returning patients, so they were loyal to you? How many of them gave you referrals? And how many gave them an online review and so on? But then you also need people who are going to report on the various metrics, such as the number of before and after photos added to your website, the social media stats, and so on. So when you run your practice with this kind of structure and focus, everyone in your practice has the clarity they need to help you succeed. And imagine how much peace of mind you would have knowing your numbers at a glance. So you're clear what and who is working or not. So